we are going to make Italian lentil soup, some melts, and some sourdough discard dough for tortillas. So let's start with our soup. We're gonna use half of an onion, so I'm gonna cut this guy right down to half so we can save the other half for later because it's a big onion. And then we're gonna chop off those ends and peel off that outer skin, so we're dealing with just the nice part of the onion. And we're gonna give just kind of a smaller dice, not too small, but not too big. There we go. And I'm gonna give a little drizzle, there's my olive oil. A little drizzle of olive oil in my Dutch oven. And we're gonna saute up our onions with some oil, and we're gonna put in a little bit of garlic. So this is 1/2 yellow onion chopped up, and then we're gonna put in a little bit of garlic, minced garlic, about, I wanna say, a teaspoon. We're gonna give this a nice little stir to coat all of our onions with the olive oil so they'll saute up nicely, and to spread the garlic around so it infuses its flavor. Okay, now we're gonna prep our other vegetables. We're gonna prep, I got 3 carrots here, and I'm gonna give a quick peel on them because they are unpeeled, and they have unpeeled carrots. They just don't, that outer skin is chewy when it cooks up, and it has a bit more of an earthy flavor. So if you want the nice flavor and texture, give them a good peel. And one more. You could also use like the pre-washed baby carrots or the pre-cut carrots. Those also work well. And here we go. I'm gonna chop off my ends, and then I'm going to quarter them and chop them up into kind of a smaller dice. That way they cook kind of quicker, and all of our pieces will be kind of smaller bite-sized pieces in our soup, because I don't want to have a huge chunk in there, because I want to be able to get all of our flavors on a spoon when I take a bite. There we go. Quarter this guy. And give him a chop down. I love the smell of garlic and onions sauteing. It just smells so good. Makes you feel like you're cooking something super gourmet. Give this guy a quarter, and we'll chop him up. We're going to be making just a simple Italian lentil soup with kind of a tomato-y base. With it, we're going to be using some tomato paste and a canned tomatoes, so we'll just give it a nice, like a tomato brothy to it. Here we go. So we've got our carrots chopped up. Now we're going to chop up our onions. I'm going to take off the ends because these were the pre-washed, pre-cut celery, and the ends tend to dry out and get a little bit more fibery. I'm going to give our onions a stir. We're going to be making this is for our Italian lentil soup. We'll also be making a cheddar melt, not cheddar melt, a salami, Havarti, and smoked Gouda melt on our sourdough bread, and some homemade tortilla dough, sourdough discard tortilla for tonight. I am going to have these the long way on some of my bigger stalks of celery so that we have just some nice finer pieces. And then we're going to give them a nice dice. This way our carrots and our celery are all about the same sizes as our onion chunks as well. There we go. You can really smell the garlic sauteing. Let's turn my Dutch oven down to a medium now. Let it nice and hot. And then we're going to toss in our carrots and our onions. Or not onions, our celery into our onions. There we go. And this is going to be our part of our vegetable base for our Italian lentil soup. So I like to do lentil soup a couple of different ways. Sometimes I do it in a curry broth. But in one of my ways that I really love is with a lot of Italian seasoning. I just think it just tastes so well, and it pairs really well with lentils. There we go. I'm gonna let those saute up. And we can prep our squash. So I have 1 zucchini and 1 yellow squash. I am going to quarter these as well and then slice them up just so we have some nice smaller pieces.
You have a question? Is a lentil a bean?
Yes, it's a legume. But they taste very similar to a bean. I'll see if I can pour a couple out of my hands so you guys can see. So lentils, they're just little flat, kind of like a bean, but they're a legume. And they tender up as you cook. They don't need long to get nice and tender. But they absorb the flavors of whatever you're cooking them in, and they have really good fiber and some protein in them as well. But yes, they are like similar to a bean, I would say. I think they're a little bit more mild than some beans.
You have a follow-up question? Are they healthy?
Yes, lentils are very healthy. Because they do have protein and a high fiber count. And they're relatively they're just very nutrient dense. Okay, we're gonna throw in our squash in here as well. And we'll give it a nice stir. And kind of saute them up. And then we're gonna add some of our seasonings to the vegetables. And then we'll do our lentils and our broth. So I'm gonna be using some Italian herb paste, which if you don't have this, you could use just dried Italian herbs. I'm gonna do a good squeeze of it. I find these pastes work really well in broths. So I'm gonna do it's gonna be about a tablespoon squeeze, and you would probably use about maybe 2 teaspoons of dried at home. I'm gonna give this a nice stir. And it's just essentially the same thing as dried Italian seasonings, but with fresher herbs. And I think they just flavor broth really well. So I'm gonna give that a nice squeeze in there and stir it up. And then we're gonna take our lentils. And this is about a cup of lentils, so I'm not gonna use I'm gonna use about maybe the half a cup of lentils to 2/3 cup of lentils. They will get a lot bigger. They absorb the liquid that they're in, so they'll kind of puff up. Here, just got an onion out. Give this a nice stir. And then we're gonna add in a can of, this is roasted garlic diced tomatoes. Or you could do, they have like an oregano one, like onion, oregano, and basil. That one works well. But some diced tomatoes, I like to use the ones that have a bit of seasoning in it because it gives a little more flavor to the
You have a question? Do you ever get bored of making same meals?
No, I kind of try to change them up a little bit so we're not eating the same food overall. We might use the same ingredients, but I will spice things different.
I think it's from a new user. I think they make the same meals, so is that why you always change them up?
Yeah, then? I think because I don't like to eat the same things over. I'm never a person who is like, I gotta have the same, chicken noodle soup, something like that, or meal plan. We eat a big variety, and I want my kids to eat a big variety so they don't get stuck in a rut either. And I think that's just because we ate a huge variety growing up. There we go. So we've got our tomatoes in here, stirred in, and now I'm going to add in about 4 cups of water. You could use chicken broth if you wanted to. I'm using 4 cups of water because I'm going to add a big spoonful of chicken bouillon. I like to use bouillon over broth because I feel like it has a bit more flavor, and I use that in replace of salt. So I'm going to get a spoon. We're going to add a big spoonful because it's about a teaspoon per cup. So I'm essentially trying to add in 4 teaspoons, which is really kind of like a big honkin' scoop. We're just going to use the rest of this. And this is going to be, we won't need to add any salt to our soup because this has enough salt in it. but it will also give a bit more flavor. I find with chicken broth is pretty bland. I like bone broth over chicken broth, but it's not a very strong like flavor in there. So we'll stir that in. We're gonna let these guys simmer. And after they've been simmering for a while, we'll add some shredded chicken. I have some shredded rotisserie chicken that we'll add to it. I like to wait until it's cooking for a while because pre-cooked chicken will get a little stringy if you add it in there and then cook it all together. So we're gonna let this guy simmer up. There we go. And as it simmers, the lentils will absorb more of the liquid. Okay, let's go on to starting our grilled cheese. Then we're gonna make our tortilla dough for dinner tonight using sourdough discard. So we're gonna use some of our sourdough breads we made the other day. We have this is just our traditional sourdough, and this was our cheddar and green onions. So we're gonna use up these guys, and we have 2 more right now, loaves proofing doing their kind of bulk proof in the fridge. We made yesterday or last night. We made another traditional loaf, which I do believe I have the recipe card posted on the link in our page. And then we made a spinach feta, which I'm very excited for because I love spinach feta bread. And then we'll cut another one right here. I like to make our breads and then we'll have them with dinner with our hot, and then we use like the leftovers to make our kind of our grilled cheeses or sandwiches for the day because they just toast up so nice. Okay, it looks like we'll have enough to get another day of sandwiches out of them if kids don't eat them. Okay, we're gonna start by spreading a little bit of room softened butter on each slice of our sourdough, just on one side. This is gonna be the side that faces down on our skillet. And I do this instead of buttering the skillet because then the butter that doesn't touch the bread won't burn.
You have a question for the sourdough? Do you need to have a Dutch oven for the sourdough? They have a thick stainless steel pot. Could that work?
Dutch ovens work better because the cast iron keeps in the heat. And stainless steel tends to lose its heat very quickly and tends to get a lot hotter. So Dutch ovens typically work better, but I've never done it in a stainless steel, so you could try it before you go out and buy and invest in a Dutch oven. But I mean, based on what I know about the 2 pots, they cook up and they heat up differently. So I'm not sure exactly. You might end up burning your bread because it would get a bit hotter. The metal gets a lot hotter. So I've never done it that way, but you could try it. But I just wonder if it might burn, especially the bottom of it. We're gonna put our skillet on, and we're gonna lay our first ones down. And today we're gonna be using smoked Gouda, Havarti, and hard salami to make our sandwiches today. I am a lover of Gouda. It's one of my favorite cheeses. And Havarti has a great melting point with grilled cheeses and making melts. So it works really well when making a sandwich. So we're gonna put it on. Make sure your cheese isn't overflowing the edges, otherwise it will melt down and burn on your skillet. And we want it to stay in between our sandwich. So I kind of do a little bit of a mosaic, getting it all to fit. And here's for our next one. Just breaking it off, and then I just tuck it in there. And then we're gonna do a thin layer of hard salami. Hard salami is just a great seasoned meat if you've never had it before. I love it. You don't need a lot. It packs a lot of flavor in the slices. So this one will be for my husband. And I like to do just kind of a thin layer. If you do it too thick, your cheeses won't melt. So you want to make sure when you're putting your meats in layers, you do just a thin layer. And then I'm gonna I'll do 3 on this one because it's a halvesies. And then we're gonna finish off with our smoked Gouda. Assuming I can open this guy up. There we go. And this will just pair nicely with the hard salami, the smokiness of the Gouda. And Gouda also melts really nicely. The other day we used shredded Gouda on a little like breakfast pizza, and it was so good. That was everybody's favorite of our breakfast pizzas. And then I'm just gonna pick off a little because I don't want it to overflow. And then we'll add our pieces of bread here. And then I get my spatula. I always use a fish spatula for my flipping because it's big and easy and it slides under. Let's give this guy a little stir. And we are going to add in, now that we've got it hot and bubbling, we've got a slow boil on it, we're gonna add in some tomato paste. We used some tomato paste the other day in our beef, it was like a braised beef pasta dish on Sunday night. So we're just kind of using up the rest of that in here.
You got a question? Does your family appreciate all the cooking you do?
Yeah, I will say they do. I mean, I think they appreciate it more with time. You know, my 9-year-old right now is my biggest food critic. Nothing is pleasing to her. But no, my older kids, they love it. They love it when I cook, especially, and then my little ones, my 3-year-old and my 18-month-old love everything I cook. They're not picky. It's when they get older, they get picky. We're gonna do our first flip on here. I'm gonna turn my skillet down. My second, I will cook both melts on sides twice. The second time we'll be getting the really nice golden crust on it. But this is really to warm up and to start melting that cheese. And I'm using the rest of my tomato paste, which is, I was gonna say about maybe a third of a cup. When I make new recipes, I try to incorporate ingredients that I have in the house. This is gonna give it a really rich tomatoey broth, which will be delicious with the lentils. It's kind of gonna be like a minestrone, but without beans, it has lentils instead. Here we go, nice. Stir it, we're gonna let that simmer. And we still have the chicken that we're gonna add in, but I'm gonna clear this to the side so we can start working on our tortillas dough, which we will roll out tonight with dinner. We're gonna do, I think, a kind of a pulled pork tacos with dinner tonight. There we go. And let me get my bowl. So this is gonna be using sourdough discard in our tortillas. And this is such a simple recipe to make. It's super easy, delicious, and you can have fresh tortillas. It's only like 5 ingredients, I feel like, or 4, maybe. Yeah, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Give this a stir. And before we start, let me just check on these, see if they're ready for the next flip. Nope, not yet. They've got a minute or 2. Okay.
You have a question? The lentils in the soup, were they dry or canned?
They were dried. Dried lentils like soften up like within 20 minutes. They get cooked pretty quickly. So you don't have to kind of worry about whether, like, beans take forever to get nice and soft, not lentils. Lentils cook up much faster than a dried bean. Dried beans, you have to let them like soak overnight. Okay, we're starting with our starter. We're gonna use 1 cup of starter. I'm gonna get a measuring cup real quick. So 1 cup of sourdough starter. We don't need to, it doesn't need to be active. Just what you're gonna be tossing out to feed for if you're making bread. So we're gonna put in 1 cup of sourdough starter into our bowl. I'll use my spoon to kind of scrape out any that's in here. Beautiful. And then we are going to add in 2/3 cup of warm water. So I put warm water in here right before we started. And you want to use warm water because it's going to allow you to, it's going to hydrate into the dough much better than like cold water is. And then we're gonna use a 1/2 cup of olive oil. Perfect. And we're gonna give this a quick stir before we add in our flour. And I'm gonna give our soup a stir. As you can tell the lentils are already starting to get a little bigger and puff up. And then we're gonna give our grilled cheeses a flip for their final browning on each side. So we're making sure we're mixing all of the wet ingredients together on our tortilla. That will mean they will incorporate in nicely. Okay, let's flip these. And we're gonna go for our nice golden crusts now on both sides. And
you got a question? Who cleans up the kitchen after a meal?
I clean up the kitchen most of the time. My husband does the unloading of the dishes. I absolutely hate unloading the dishes. And then while I'm cleaning the kitchen, he does like the homework with the kids and the bedtime routines. Like he starts them. So it's kind of, I am much faster at the kitchen cleaning process. So I like to get it done with quicker. And I have special, like some things can't go in the dishwasher and whatnot that I know. We're gonna add in 2 teaspoons of salt. So 1, 2. And now we're gonna mix in 3 1/3 cup of all-purpose flour. So put it in here. 1, 2, 3, and 1/3 cup. And so we've got our flour right here. I'm gonna grab my dough whisk so we can start mixing it up. Let's check on my grilled cheeses real quick before we get messy. Still need it. I have mine turned down really low, so they're just gonna cook really slow. And then we're gonna whisk this up and then we'll knead it and divide it into balls. You could do this in a stand mixer if you wanted to, but it is really not difficult to do it with your hands. So instead of like pulling everything out, I'm just gonna use my dough whisk until I have a nice shaggy dough, and then I'll turn it out and knead it the rest of the way. But it comes together and incorporates really easy. It's not a stiff dough. You can see we've already got a nice shag on it. And then what we're gonna do now with the shag, we're gonna flip it out onto our countertop. And then I'll kind of push and we're gonna just knead it together. And it will incorporate really well. And then the trick is we're gonna divide it into our balls now that we'll be rolling out. So this is enough to make 16 tortillas. You could have it, but we have a large family, so we'll eat 16 tortillas since there's, at any given night, 7 to 9 of us eating. I have 5 kids, and then my husband and I, so that's 7. And then we do cook for my parents an awful lot, so they join us too when they're in town. So we have quite an army to feed here. So we're just kneading it. There we go. And it's just a nice, easy, tender dough. And as it sits, because we're making it now, we're just gonna let it sit until dinner time tonight, and then we'll be able to roll it out into the tortillas. And they'll just make lovely little tortillas for our tacos. Okay. Let's see if these guys are ready for their final flip. Turn it up a little bit more. We'll divide our dough in just a second, but now that our soup is almost done, we're gonna add in our shredded chicken. So this is just the pulled rotisserie chicken that you can get from Costco. And I absolutely love it because it allows me to make pretty simple soups in the middle of the day without having to go through the work of boiling chicken and shredding it myself. And it's nice, it's pre-cooked, I'll throw it in here, give it a good stir, and then I'll wash my hands. And this will just make for a really nice hearty soup. So this is our Italian lentil soup, and it has a nice tomato broth kind of to it, and that got nice and thick from the tomato paste, because tomato paste is just reduced tomatoes, so it will have just a really nice velvety broth. We're gonna let that, I'm gonna wash my hands real quick. Okay, let's do a flip on our grilled cheeses for their last final crust. Good. We're gonna get their last golden crust on them. I'm cooking them at low so they cook nice and slow. And then we're gonna start rolling these in balls. So I'm gonna get my pastry cutter because that works the best for cutting dough. So this is a pastry cutter, if you didn't know. It's just a thin blade, like it's not sharp, but it just is thin and it cuts through. So we're gonna be making this into 16 balls. So I'm just gonna start by cutting in half and then cutting in fourths. And then you kind of can take, I'm gonna steal a little bit and put this guy over here. So then we'll just cut each one of these again into fourths. And that is just an easy way. So then you're not trying to pinch off the exact same amount for each one. It's just easier to kind of pre-cut and then roll them into the balls. And it doesn't matter if they're a little bit off on the size, because you're gonna roll them out. So if your tortilla, one is smaller than the other, it's not a huge deal. But we're just gonna roll them out into our balls. And this will just be easier when we're rolling them out into the tortilla shape later, or if you have a tortilla press, you can just put them in that press. Pinch them around. There we go. And these will make our delicious homemade tortillas for our tacos tonight. We're gonna do like a shredded pork taco. Say, ooh la la, almost done. But these will be, if you've ever had like homemade tortillas or gone to a restaurant where they truly make them homemade, they're absolutely delicious. So these sourdough tortillas will be at dinner tonight. This is our Italian lentil soup. It's almost done. You can see the lentils have now really absorbed a lot of the liquid and are nice and soft and tender. And then we have our grilled Italian melt right here. Okay, let me get a plate for our melts so we can serve those up and our soup. So, we've got our melt right here, and then I'm gonna get a nice scoop of soup. And this is our Italian lentil soup with chicken, and we used zucchini, yellow squash, carrots, celery, Italian seasoning, a chicken bouillon, and some lentils. And this is gonna be our lunch today. Delicious. We'll give a nice cut into our sandwich so you guys can see. You can hear that crunch as it cuts through. And then my favorite part is when you have like all that melty good cheese. This is the Gouda and the Havarti. They make really great cheeses for that. And then our last but not least, we made our sourdough homemade tortilla dough for tonight's dinner. Well guys, we are done cooking for lunch today. Thank you for joining us. Don't forget to like and subscribe. We try to do live cooking shows every single day. Also feel free to comment or send us a message on a recipe that you might like. Again, thank you. Don't forget to like.